Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Pleased to have with me back on the show once again a good friend and film snob extraordinaire. I'm adding a title for you, Ernie. Ernie Quiroz. Welcome to the show, Ernie.
Thank you. Add that to my resume. I think people
Yes,
already know that,
about you.
but
Yeah,
I'll officially make it official.
make it official. I put it on there. Why not? This is a special episode. We're doing Hidden Gems of 2023. Very exciting. Ernie and I are playing some catch up, watching some films that maybe didn't get like a lot of theatrical buzz, or maybe even any theatrical buzz in some cases, but that have risen to the ranks of critics' lists. So, and I always like to do these episodes because this helps me catch up for my end of the year list for things I missed. So we'll start with our first film, which was my pick, Tori and Lokita, from one of my favorite filmmakers, the Dardenne brothers, Jean-Pierre and Luc Dardenne. Film is about two African migrant children who are struggling to stay together and really survive in an industrial Belgian city. Lokita is 17 and Tori is 12 years old. They are pretending to be siblings because through a series of circumstances, Tori, the younger boy, has refugee status, so he is able to stay, but Lokita, who is really his primary caregiver and really, bonded like a sibling, is not, and is constantly being threatened with being, sent back. She's also trying to send money back home to her family back in Africa. Like a lot of pretty much like all of the Dardenne brother movies, this is kind of a moral thriller film that looks at the circumstances of unfortunate people who are put in some sort of peril or really difficult circumstance. Unlike a lot of their other films, where sometimes the main protagonists themselves, and I think of films like Les Enfants, where the main protagonist is a little bit morally ambiguous themselves. Here we have two people that are really innocent and put into kind of a horrible situation. I found this film, I think this is one of their best ones in recent years. I've loved all of their films. The Sun and Les Enfants are probably two of my favorites, but I've loved almost every single one of their films. I think their last one, Young Ahmed, was probably one of their weakest films. And this one kind of gets them back to form. Again, working with child actors, which is something they do really, really well. I mean, I don't think these two kids have been in films before, but they're just absolutely authentic and amazing. Yeah, I really liked it, although I have to say the ending was just absolutely devastating and left me with like a pit in my stomach. I'm curious to see what you thought, Ernie.
Yeah, I liked it, and I do like the Dardennes. I like some of their stuff. I agree with you that they're kind of hit or miss. Mostly hit on their stuff, and this was a good one. It's funny. I just realized, I kind of caught up with my picks because I actually watched my movies like a long time ago, and then I rewatched them, decided to refresh my memory. Uh, I noticed there's like interesting themes running through at least three of the films that I was totally inadvertent in the
Yeah, because we
sense
kind of picked
that
these randomly, right? So yeah,
yeah, yeah, they kind of picked them randomly. That a lot of the films are just about relationships and this about sort of like family dramas, and they're very small, sort of quiet films, sort of small dramas.
yeah,
They're not anything big or flashy, but there's a the deal with family relationships, and there's a secret about each in each film, a secret about a family relationship
that's
of
true.
where
3 out of the 4 are about families with secrets. Yeah,
you think one thing, and then it's something else. And none of the secrets are particularly, they're not spoilers or anything or plot twists, huge things. But yeah, this one, how they pretend to be brother and sister to sort of survive the system or the mechanism of being these refugees in a new part of the world. Um, for me, the ending, I don't know. This we definitely. I don't think we don't want to spoil this, but for me, the ending just felt a little too like if you watch enough of these films, you know that you know that they're gonna not end well. Like that's sort of the trope of indie films or a lot of international films. It's like going in that they might be depressing and they might be kind of bleak, and so the ending I think kind of fulfilled that and wasn't and for me was a little too on the nose or too predictable in that sense of like of
Hmm.
course this is refugees and everything's going well and it's like okay now you kind of have the sad ending and that felt a little too cliche for my taste.
Well,
um
it's actually interesting because some of his previous films, well, some of their specifically, some of the films they did probably in the trying to think which period this would be, but I was trying to think specifically the one with Marion Cotillard, 2 Days, One Night, has a little bit of a happy ending, and they had a couple others there. I think The Kid with the Bike, maybe. So they'd kind of gotten away from the super grim endings that a lot of their earlier films had. So it felt to me more like they were going full circle. But I also think it shows like there were so many opportunities. The scene that's actually the most heartbreaking for me is the scene with the car and the person that stops, and you have this moment where your heart goes, "Oh, yes, someone stopped for them." And I don't, again, without giving too much away about why they're out somewhere where they need a car to stop for them, but then the person just kind of was like, "Oh," and then moves on. And I felt like, this was kind of maybe their statement about what we have done to people that are in peril, what we have done to
yeah.
people, whether it's poor people or immigrants or people that are in a really tough situation. We kind of just move on and go on with our lives and don't think about what's going to happen to them next. So, and I think the speech that Tori gives at the end, wow, that it just really got to me, the fact that, yeah, I mean, for him, he's safe, quote unquote, in this other country, but now he's completely alone, and it was pretty devastating. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, enjoyed is maybe not the right word. I thought it was a really good film, and again, I've almost liked everything they've done. They're so consistent in a way that I think people take them for granted almost because they've been doing this type of thing
Yeah.
since what, the late 90s now. So it's yeah, so anyway, it's a great one to see. It's on Criterion Channel. I think it's exclusively there. This one, I don't think it probably got a limited theatrical release, but didn't show here in Salem, for instance. So I would definitely
Yeah, I would.
recommend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I recommend it too, and it is remarkable that I heard very little about this film, considering how much how many movies I watch, and festivals I go to, and just how popular they are and how you
Right. And
know,
it did play at Cannes Film Festival. It won some awards there. So it did pretty well compared to some of their previous films, and then
but then
kind of
it
just
never.
fizzled. Yeah.
I mean, here in Phoenix, theoretically a big film market. I don't think it even played here. So.
Yeah. Really unfortunate. So we should move on to our next film, which I think you're introducing. I'm excited to talk about
Yeah,
it as
so
well.
it's a film called After Love. This is written directed by Aleem Khan. It's his feature film directorial debut. This is one of those weird films. I think it premiered at a festival in like 2020, and then was kind of floating around. Didn't have any distribution deal until it took like a year and a half of kind of being on the festival circuit before it finally got distribution, which was again very limited earlier this year, and is now on streaming. You can find it. I'm not sure how you find it, but I found it on BFI has a
Mm.
streaming service, and you can sign up for that through Amazon, and you can do like a trial subscription. But so it's a British film. It's a drama. This is another family drama, kind of surrounding a secret. The secret is revealed pretty early on. It's about a woman who's like about middle-aged woman who's converted to Islam to she's British. She converted to Islam to marry her husband. And her husband dies, pretty early on in the movie. You don't see it happen, but and then as she's sort of dealing with that and sort of going through his personal effects and sort of dealing with life afterwards, comes to find out that he's has his whole family on the other side of the British Channel, the English Channel, uh, another wife, a teenage son, just his whole family that he that obviously she didn't know about. So she goes to visit them to sort of confront her. And right at the moment that they meet, I don't know that she gets out, but this other woman, this French woman living in France, thinks that she's there to be the housekeeper, and so she's kind of caught off guard, and then ends up deciding to impersonate the housekeeper. Like she doesn't really know what to do, so she's like, "Yeah, I'm here to be the housekeeper." And then she ends up as a way to kind of get close to this family and kind of discover like who they are, and kind of not in any way to sort of like uh spy on them or anything, but I think she's just kind of still stunned that that he had this whole secret family, this whole secret life that she didn't know about. So that it's about her sort of dealing with them, and in a way, like here's this teenage son that in a way that she never knew about. And so then it's basically about that, about her sort of trying to piece together like who was this man that I was married to, and how did he have this life that I didn't know anything about. So to me, again, like all the films, it's about the relationships, it's about this family drama, and really a really great performance by the lead female lead. I thought it was really, really remarkable. Um, and again, sort of like the secrets that we lead and how they come out, and then what happens when they do come out. So there is a little bit of I don't want to spoil too much of the ending, but to me the ending was really powerful when it is finally some of these secrets do kind of finally come out.
Yeah, I think the film is really anchored by this amazing lead performance by Joanna Scanlon as Mary Hussein, because you really have to. I mean, she's in every shot of the movie. In fact, we never actually, which I thought was interesting, we never really see the husband. The very beginning, we hear his voice. She's kind of talking to him. He's in another room. She's in the kitchen, kind of doing dishes or something, and just conversing with him. So we hear his voice. We get an idea of kind of their rapport as husband and wife, and then he's gone soon after that. And then the rest of it is her journey to meet this whole other family that he has in France, and also very different. The French wife is very different from her, so that was also very interesting to me, even though they don't talk about that per se. It's obvious that, like, for instance, the French wife has not converted. She does not wear a headscarf or anything, unlike Mary, and she does have this teenage son, and he's grappling with a lot because he has this kind of absentee father. He doesn't know that there's this other woman over in England, but the French wife does know that. So there's all this kind of thing about who knows what and who doesn't know what and what they know. And even though the French wife thinks she knows things, then as Mary discovers as she's in the house, he's also told her a lot of fibs because he's told her a lot of things about Mary that are not true, including the fact that he apparently has told the French wife that he was married to a Pakistani woman, not an English
Yeah,
woman. So there's just all these layers of untruths that have to
yeah,
be untold, and then and again, lots of time alone with Mary, kind of just, there's a scene with her in the bathtub, kind of, she's like a, more of a conventional looking middle-aged woman, right? So she's not glamorous or super thin, or, she's just, and she's kind of like looking at her body and thinking about things, thinking about her life. And, there's just a lot of introspection, but it's not boring at all. It's actually a fairly short film. And the two women are really interesting. And then and then Mary starts to kind of bond with the teenage son a little bit, which I also thought was interesting. And then we learn
yeah,
more about her and her husband, that they had once had a child. And so that was really, so there's just all these layers of like family secrets getting
yeah. And
uncovered.
they're and I'm not going to give too much away, but the other woman, her name is Genevieve, the French wife. They don't know that he's passed away. Because he does travel a lot for work, and so they just think that he's on this extended trip and just sort of been incommunicado. So
Right.
they don't have no idea that this has happened. Um, and there's some family tension. The son is doesn't really get along with his mom too much, and he's like typical teenager stuff. He also he's closeted, and so he's having trouble of he sort of she walks in, Mary walks in on him, making out with this boy, and he's not sure like what to do, and like whether he could tell his mom or dad and all this stuff. And so she ends away kind of becoming like the surrogate mother and like cooks
Hmm.
dinner, cooks a meal for him in a way because like she's like, yeah, this is kind of like my son too. And then of course she doesn't know that, and he's like texting his dad, because he wants to go live with his dad because they're moving and he doesn't want to move with the mom and he'd rather be with the dad and he thinks the dad's still alive. And so Mary still has his old, cell
Her
phone, and so
husband's
she,
phone, yeah. So she's texting
yeah, so
back,
then all
pretending to
these,
be the father,
yeah,
and giving him probably the messages the son needs to hear from his father, but it's not his father saying it, right? Like, I love you, I
exactly.
miss you, I think of you all the time, like all the things this boy really needs to hear from his father, and probably hasn't in certain ways. So, yeah, very interesting film. Definitely recommend it. It is available, like on you mentioned, on Amazon. Through you could do the free subscription from BFI to watch it, or pay, I think, $3.99 if you want to pay for it. It's too bad it's not on one of the more popular streaming services, but still accessible on streaming. So okay, so let's move on to another family drama. The way
Another
this worked
family
out.
drama. This played at Sundance. It's called 1001. This is written directed by A.V. Rockwell, initials A.V. Rockwell, who's a female filmmaker from New York. Again, this is her feature length directorial debut. And this is on Peacock right now, and it's sort of one of those films. It won the grand jury prize at Sundance, but it's just one of those films that I think got a very limited theatrical and sort of got dumped on streaming, and people never heard about it, or they forgot about it. But it's
Yeah.
definitely worth one seeking out. So it is primarily about a mother and son, a black woman who just got out of prison, and she's sort of reconnecting with her son, who's, I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9, you know, um, and um, and this takes place in the 90s. And so she's sort of trying to reconnect with her son. Her son has sort of been in the foster care system. And then she decides to, now that she's kind of out of prison and she feels like, okay, I'm more capable of being a mom now, she decides to sort of kidnap him from the foster parents to live with him. Then we do a time jump to where he's about a teenager. He's just about to get ready to graduate from high school, and thinking about the future. And then again, there is some secrets of their relationship that are revealed at the end that I definitely don't want to spoil. But primarily, it's about the relationship between this mother and her son, and about how she had a rough life. She, was in and out of prison, and her main partner, this man named Lucky, who does live with them, he also got, mixed up with some prison life, and she just doesn't want her son to follow in her footsteps, or kind of fall into the same traps, like all parents. Like, we want a better life for our kids. And she realizes, as a black woman, she says, no, I don't know if I can curse on the show, but she's like,
Try not to.
no one gives a shit about black women. Like,
No.
black women are, have there's so many things stacked against them. And so here she is, this black woman, primarily raising this kid by herself in a system that just doesn't care about her, about them, uh, to try to, provide a better life for him. And she succeeds. She wins. She's like, he's about ready to go to like MIT, or all these different schools and everything. And
He's
she
like a
has
top
managed.
student at his school. He's doing really
Yeah.
well. Yeah, yeah.
Which to
That was her
me was like,
success in life, was him. Yeah.
what yeah, her success in life was to set him up. And so which to me was like, again, I like that, because again, you think about indie films and the cliche, like, you think this is going to be another film about black trauma, or just about misery and depression. Like, no, here's, she was able to do it to get her son out.
Yeah.
But there was a twist at the end that sort of kind of maybe
Right.
throws things into chaos. So I don't know,
Yeah,
what did
don't give
you?
it away because I didn't see it coming. I have to tell you, I didn't know anything about this film going into it. I think it's better to know less. And boy, I didn't see it coming at all. And it threw me. I really felt, I have to say, the performances in this film I thought were universally great, particularly Teyana Taylor is Inez, the mother, who just comes off very authentic. Like, she didn't seem like an actress trying to play street, if that makes sense. She seemed street to me, street smart, just her toughness and her attitude. And she's not always she's not like a perfect character. We almost portraying her like, yeah, she raises a son and he becomes really smart. And she's a tough mother. I mean, she's hard on this kid and not always the easiest to deal with and doesn't always make the best options, but she is keeping him safe. And they do reveal that she also was in the foster care system. So she knows what it's like to be raised in that system. And she realizes that it's a lot of why she became the way she was, because she just went into from group home to group home and didn't have a stable family life. And she doesn't want that for him. And so she's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that that doesn't happen to him. And her determination. And even when Lucky first arrives on the scene, I thought it was going in a totally different direction. Like you said, I thought it was going into this black trauma. I thought, oh boy, she's hooked up with this guy and he's going to be trouble and she's going to let
Yeah.
this guy walk all over her and exploit her and the kid, and then he turns out to be actually a really good guy and actually a
Yeah.
good influence on the kid. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, finally. I feel like AV Rockwell, I don't know much about her, but she wanted to kind of upend some of the stereotypes of what we see in black indie films,
Yeah.
like, oh, the father figure's always a bad guy, or he's a criminal, he's a drug dealer,
Exactly.
whatever, and he had
Yeah.
been out of prison, but he's like, no, I don't want to go back there, and he's actually a good father model for the son. And
Yeah.
and the same thing with Inez, like her character, like, yeah, she's tough, she's had problems, she's done bad things, but she's also pretty smart and she's talented. We find out early on, like, she's really good at doing hair. She just doesn't have opportunities to do it. So she ends up taking crappy jobs. She doesn't like cleaning houses, so she can put a roof over their heads and provide him a nice apartment. I'm curious
Yeah.
what you thought, Ernie, about one thing, one method she uses. The film kind of goes through time from 1994 to 2005, and it's showing kind of the gentrification basically of Harlem where it's set. And so over time, and it flashes up these things, and then there's these, and you can see the white land building owners moving in. And at first I thought, oh, this is a little, I'm not sure, this seems like a stretch. Like, we're in a family drama, now we're bringing in gentrification. But then it does sort of start to work towards the end because it affects their own living situation. But
Mhm.
I was curious about what you thought about that device in the film with the passage
Yeah.
of time.
Watching it the second time, it did feel like it did maybe kind of stick out a little bit. I mean, there's some things overall that you can tell this is a first time filmmaker. There's not a lot of things don't quite connect, and there are some. I think there's some elements that are introduced that aren't fully realized. But overall, I mean, I this is one of those debut films where you're like, I'm interested in seeing what they do next.
Right,
Um,
exactly. Same thing for the
I
last
want to
filmmaker
mention
too. Yeah.
yeah, I also want to mention I really like the score, sort of this jazzy score, but not like a real overtly like in your face. It was a little more subdued, and the cinematography, but just and then also the way of capturing sort of New York of the '90s. It really had a really great way to evoke sort of the time and place of New York in the '90s. That was really well
Hmm.
done.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. She's a very promising filmmaker. We have actually three out of our four films today, again, by total coincidence, are first time filmmakers that have just kind of blown it out of the water, I think, for their first film. Maybe not perfect films, but the last one was a first time. This one was a first time filmmaker. And our next one, which I'll just kind of shift into now, Reality by Tina Satter, is also her first feature length film. Although she is a very long time playwright and theater person, this is her first time making a feature film. Um, this movie is based almost completely fully on the transcripts of an FBI interrogation of American intelligence leaker Reality Winner. And yes, that is her real name. They show the real Reality Winner. And I feel like parents, if you're going to name your kids, maybe don't set them up to have names like Reality Winner because she turns out to not be such a big winner in life. Played by Sydney Sweeney in a absolutely terrific performance. She's probably best known to a lot of audiences from the TV show Euphoria, but here showing she's got the chops to do dramatic film roles. And Josh Hamilton in a really great performance as this really weird, almost seems bumbling FBI guy, but not so bumbling, it turns out in the end. Um, what a weird little movie. I think I hadn't seen it before, so I watched it fresh for the show, and and you can see that the filmmaker had a theatrical background because really there's two scenes, right? There's two sets. There's the outside of her apartment and then the inside, and that's it, of her house. That's the whole movie. It's basically two settings, right? And the majority of the film seems to be spent by them talking about her animals, worried about, like, is her dog going to be out or in? Is her cat going to be out or in the house? So for a while, you're kind of thinking, where the heck is this going? If you don't go in knowing already, that what she's done, then you're really confused for a little while until it sort of starts to unveil itself that something, that poor reality has done something, and the FBI is basically setting a trap for her and kind of, even if they're not doing it intentionally, playing kind of these bumbling, fools where they're, asking her questions, and then they keep saying throughout the film, like that this is all voluntary, by the way, you don't have to tell us anything. But the whole thing, they just seem so weirdly casual and inept that of course she does, and probably to her own demise, honestly, tell them things. And the reality of what she ended up doing was, of course, giving some information to the media showing that the Russians did in fact interfere with the Trump election. And this is information that the government had, and reality felt like the American people needed to know. She wasn't leaking super secret stuff that gave away, it wasn't like a Snowden thing where it could interfere with American intelligence or put anyone in danger. But nonetheless, they really threw the book at her. So I'm curious what you thought of this film, Ernie.
Yeah, there was a documentary about her and the whole document leak called United States versus Reality Winner. That was at South by maybe a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I was familiar with her story, and then I vaguely remember it in the news and everything. So this film was very much different from what I was expecting, and this was a film I knew a lot about it. So going in, I sort of had the proper background to kind of understand a little bit. So I'm wondering if people go into this not knowing any of that, how much would they enjoy this film? How much would they understand? Because
Yeah.
this is essentially almost like a real time, um, like you said, they use the actual audio transcript of the initial FBI sort of contact, which was itself was maybe like an hour and just
Well,
less
it's
than two
exactly an
hours.
hour and a half almost. So the film
So
is
this is
in real
almost
time.
a real time deal of so you don't
Yeah.
really get a whole lot of background of who she was. I mean, it's revealed in the story as they're talking, but I don't know. I feel like if you don't know a lot about her, you might be a little bit lost.
I was for
So
quite a bit because, and then I started getting on my phone. I was like, what is going on? Like,
yeah.
why are they interrogating this woman? Because all they're talking about is her cat and her dog for like literally the first 30 minutes. And then it starts to
But in a
slow.
way, I feel like it is kind of it's deliberately, what they're doing. Like they obviously know more than what they're revealing, and they talk about that. But that's exactly what FBI, the authorities try to do is they'll get you talking about sort of this innocuous, innocent things to try to distract you, to try to trip you up and trick you into revealing other things that you didn't intend to.
Hmm.
Which of course the whole time I'm thinking that of like, and they don't read her the Miranda rights. They don't actually show her the warrant. They say, "Oh, we have a warrant," but they don't. It's coming. It's coming. You can read it when it gets here, but they never. It's a
They
good
never
half hour
actually
before
show it. You never are clear if
they
they
never
actually
actually
have
show
one
it.
or not. Yeah. Yeah.
But the whole time I'm thinking, and of course this is me with my legal hat of like, are you guys going to Mirandize me? Like, I'm not going to talk until I have a lawyer present or until whatever you do. I'm not talking. Like, I don't
Right.
care what we're talking about. So they trick her into talking about her dogs and cats and whatever to try to
Right.
trip her up and.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it. I do think people should just go in, knowing it's going to be confusing for a bit, but we're out of time, Ernie. And so, some great films for people to explore here. The last one, Reality, is on Max, so fully streamable. As always, go to our website at realfilmsnops.com. And Ernie, thank you for being on the show once again. I'm sure we'll have you back in September for Telluride and other film festivals. Have a great day and great movies. Bye bye.